Another thing I wanted to add on the hate crimes is that you often hear the argument that, well, the law actually does take the motivation of the offender into consideration. For example, there are different types of murders. There's murder in the first degree, there's murder in the second degree, there's voluntary manslaughter, and so on. Well, this argument is misleading because the law actually looks only at a specific aspect of guilt. Namely, it looks at whether the offender deliberately was planning to take another's life. In other words, first-degree murder, if I'm not mistaken, is something like when it's a planned and premeditated murder. When the offender wanted to take a life, he planned for it. He deliberately thought about it beforehand, and he executed a certain plan to take a life. Second-degree murder is a lesser offense in that it was not planned and deliberate and premeditated murder. It may have been deliberate, but it was not planned. For example, somebody assaults somebody with a gun, threatens somebody with a gun. There was no initial intent to kill. They only wanted to rob them, but the person resisted and they pulled the trigger. They still disregarded. There's a certain degree of disregard for human life that can be proven in court, but it was not specifically planned beforehand as a murder. It was originally planned as a robbery. Voluntary manslaughter is something else in that there was no intent to kill, but there was a heat of the moment, a crime of passion. For example, somebody walks in and they're spouse with another person, they see red, they grab a heavy object and they smash the offender. That's a poor choice of word. Smash the third person on the head. They die instantly. There was no intent to kill. It was not premeditated. It was they did not necessarily want that person to die. They just acted on an extreme emotional reaction, and they can be charged with and tried for voluntary manslaughter. But those are degrees in how the offender, the perpetrator, treated the possible outcome of their actions, whether they wanted the other person to die, whether they planned for the other person to die, whether that was the original intended result of their action, but not why they wanted that person dead. I hope you see the difference. It's very clear to me.